Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our program tonight. We are back in session. Hello. Welcome to another night of Mom's Night In. I am your host, Tanya May Avent, and I have the whole crew tonight. Well, almost all the whole crew. Hey, ladies. How's everybody doing tonight? I have Markeisha, our producer.
Good. How are you?
Shara and Diane is with us. Hello. So we are doing a special tonight. It's the last Tuesday in November. And our theme for November was loss of a father. And as we shared last week, our guest for tonight, her mother passed away this month as well. And her funeral was last week. And there was no way, of course, that we could have her come on and just share what she was just struggling with, the unexpected loss of her mom. And so this show tonight, we were actually going to do in December. And we talked as a team and said, let's do it now because it's still the holiday. Thanksgiving's a holiday. We can still share. So we are doing a special about grief and the holidays and how we're going to navigate through that. So we want to say hello to everyone. Let us know who is with us, where you're joining from. We are so excited about this conversation because we know that there are many people, and including us, even you'll hear our stories as well. A lot of us are struggling with some point of grieving, especially as we hit the holidays each year. We may experience the same kind of feelings over and over again. So we want to talk through them. We want to talk about how we're dealing with them, maybe give some points of view to be able to help someone else that's going through your mourning and your grieving process for your loved ones. As Thanksgiving's approaching, as Christmas, as it's supposed to be, the season of being jolly and festive, and that just doesn't always feel festive to us. So welcome. Please, if you know someone who's lost someone, if you know someone struggling with grief, please go ahead and share this with them. So hello, I see Carmen May is on. Welcome, Carmen. Good to have you back on. I see Leslie Shao, our soror, is on as well.
Hey, Leslie.
Welcome, Leslie. Thank you for coming back. And I see Diana is on from Willingboro, New Jersey as well. And my cousin Coco is on from down in the DMV area. I pinged her. She has recently lost her mom. So Coco, we're praying for you, but I'm so glad to see you on. So hello to you as well. So if you're joining us, let us know who you are and where you're joining us from. And please feel free to engage. We'll be pulling up your comments on the screen tonight. Markeisha is going to be doing double duty. She's going to be talking tonight and also sharing her comments as well. But we just pray that everyone that's on will hear something that they need to hear. Whatever you know that you need to hear from God, we just pray that through our words that we're able to minister to you and that you leave different than you came in. So ladies, our Loss of a Father series has been, I think, powerful. And even on IG this week, I want to read what I saw. I follow, this is an amazing handle to follow. It's called Good Grief HQ. And they just talk about grief, and if they share really faith-based grieving content. And it said, I'm dreading the questions, the looks of pity, the expectation to pretend I'm going to be okay these holidays. Everyone is excited for the holidays, but I just want to hide until it's over. How am I supposed to feel thankful when the person I'm most thankful for isn't here? And I'm like, that's how a lot of people feel. That's how a lot of people feel. And that just kind of resonated with me. And I said, that was perfect. It's a perfect sentiment to be able to connect with, in terms of there's always going to be a hole in our hearts for our loved one. There's always going to be that part that's missing, especially if the holidays meant something special to them as well. So we just want to kind of just share. And again, feel free in the comments to be able to share as well. We see Nicole is on from Woodbury as well. So thank you. One of our faithful guests who joins us also. So again, we just invite you to just encourage and send it out if you know someone who just needs to be among like-minded women and men, because we know we have some men tonight, but just as we talk through this topic. So if this is your first time joining us, I just want to share who we are. We are a community of moms. We provide biblical and emotional support and content to bring hope, encouragement, and inspiration to women facing difficult seasons in life. And for each of us that are on the panel today, we've all experienced loss, and we're all going to share a bit of our stories, our experiences for all our loss as well. And Markeisha, I'm getting some feedback from your microphone as well. So I see Diana, if you want to put her comment up, she says, it's been 11 years since she lost her dad, and he passed away 6 days before her birthday. And we talked about that as we were even talking about a team, Diana. We talked about milestones that we faced that, even in my case, my brother passed the evening of Easter, and then my dad passed the morning of Mother's Day. So those holidays, every time we come those holidays, I think about it, but then they also have the date of their passing. And a lot of times those milestones can send us into a tailspin. But again, I think as families, we all probably celebrated Thanksgiving. We all probably celebrated Christmas together. And we all have specific memories and specific things that those holidays meant to us. We just want to kind of talk about it and really engage us. So I'm going to open us up in prayer, and then ladies, we're going to get started. Dear Heavenly Father, God, I thank you so much for Faith-Filled Moms. We thank you for another Tuesday for Moms Night, and we thank you for bringing us through the November series, Lord. And we pray that as we close out today, God, that we just have a powerful conversation about grief. We talk about our experiences, but finding you in there, finding your comfort, God. And we know that you have comforted us so that we can be comfort to others. So we just pray that you use us tonight to be able to comfort those that are watching. We pray that you would be with all of our technology, that not one word would be lost, and that this ministry would just go out and touch the heart and lives of those that are grieving tonight. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay, so again, it's our Faith-Filled Moms team. So if you are joining, this is our team that brings I want to say the magic, but brings our show together and brings it alive every week. And so we all have our own unique stories. So I'm going to actually go ahead and start. And we're missing Paula Hollis is one of our guests who's come on multiple times about grieving. And she talks a lot about space and grace, and how we need to be able to give ourselves. That was important to me even today, giving ourselves space and giving our families space, but then showing them grace as well. And I had a situation today. My mom called me, and I usually get the turkey for Thanksgiving. And with just so much going on, I did not get the turkey. And she called me this evening and was asking about turkeys. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry, I forgot to give it. And usually I would be beating myself up, but I'm like, no, I've got to give myself grace today. There's a lot going on, and I made a mistake, and it's okay. And I felt, I literally heard Paula's words, like, you have to give yourself grace. You say about giving other people grace, but you have to give yourself grace as well. When things don't go our way, when things are when you're struggling with things, and you're not exactly where you want to do, you're not doing what you want to do, you don't feel the way you want to feel. And so I'm going to ask you ladies, I think you're on mute, but you can come off of mute. I want to talk about that in terms of that space and grace. What does that mean to each of you in terms of with yourself grieving, dealing with family members grieving? How do you have you learned how to offer space and grace yet? Since it's been probably about a year since we've had that introduced to our show. So Markeisha, I'll start with you. What does space and grace look like to you? Have you been able to utilize that yet?
I have. When my brother passed away, for a while there, I would not go to work on his birthday. And that was me giving myself the space to process, how I was feeling, or, because we never got closure behind his passing. And also because some years I felt okay, but then other years I couldn't function. So that for me was giving myself the space to feel how I was feeling.
Yeah.
The grace came in with the emotions. I have a hard time sometimes just showing my emotions, showing how that something has affected me, that, I'm not okay with what happened. I'm never going to be okay with what happened. Same thing with my mom, it was like one day she was here, the next day she was gone. And being, feeling that. and being alone and feeling that
Yeah.
too, that space as well as that grace, just letting myself have those emotions. Because for me, I struggle with, being showing whether or not I'm weak.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
I can't show, that I'm vulnerable. I can't, you know let that soft spot be seen. So I definitely have learned that it's okay to, do that sloppy bawling your eyes out, snotty crying,
Yeah.
you know, and still be able to function. I think it's needed, because when you let it bottle up inside of you, it gets worse.
And it's
And I've also
processing that.
experienced that.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's processing that. And I don't know if we put up the website. I don't know if we did or didn't, but faithfulmoms.org. And we've done a number of series. We've done loss of a mom. We've done loss
Mhm.
of a spouse. We've done loss of a child. We've done loss of a brother. And we've done loss now of a father. So we just invite you to go to the website. If any of those, and it may not even be the same relationship, but there's a lot of content on our website to be able to read blogs and even watch conversations about people sharing how they've gotten through grief or still going through grief, and they're able to process it. And when you talked about the space, we've been saying this recently, I think as of this month, in terms of sometimes that grief can be a constant companion, especially I think when the loss is new,
So especially.
versus sometimes it comes for more extended visits, where you may be going through your day and you hear a song, there's a memory, you go to a place, and then grief unexpectedly comes for a visit, and it
Yep.
could stay for a couple of minutes, it could stay for a couple hours, but grief looks different to everyone. And I think what we also talked about was, even amongst, so say me and my siblings, and we've lost the same father, but doesn't mean that we grieve the same way. We're having the same
Mhm.
experience. We've all had different relationships with him, and we all grieve different ways. And so I think that's part of the grace that we talked about, being able to even show your loved ones that they may not be grieving the same way that you
Yes.
are. They may not be processing. Somebody may be able to start, I don't want to say living, but start doing other things, where someone else would be like, I'm not ready to even do that yet. But that's each person's a journey, and we have to be able to give them space for that.
And I have to agree with that. But with my situation, losing my brother, I became an only child.
Hmm.
So, and then losing my mom, it just was my father and me. When I grew up, my parents divorced when I was 16, but it was just the four of us. And so there are times where he and I don't even talk about what day it is. October 31st is Ron's birthday. He would have been 44. We don't talk about it. We
Mm.
don't talk about my mom's birthday. Like, we may not even reach out to one another
So it's not
about
even
it.
sometimes acknowledged then when the day comes.
Right. But I know and understand that he hurts about it every day. He hurts,
Mm-hmm.
he hurts behind my mother. He
Mm-hmm.
hurts behind my brother, like every day. But like you said, it's that grace in understanding that he processes it differently. He
So
it you know
I want to start with you then, and we're going to share, for those that are guests, we're going to share each of our individual stories. But I want to talk to Markeisha, because it's interesting what you say. Talk to us about your approach to the holidays with your brother and your mother being gone now.
my brother didn't affect me as
Mm-hmm.
much.
Mm-hmm.
But when my mother died, I hate the holidays. I hate the holidays, and I I I don't want to be a part of it. I'd rather just sit on my couch and watch TV. I especially hate Christmas. I especially hate Christmas. Because Christmas was my mom's holiday. And my mom would go all out on Christmas. She would have, the Christmas tree would already be up, presents done, Christmas cards would be on the banister, take to the banister. We would make cookies. We would make chocolate pudding. She had these nice little cups, and stuff like that. And I did some of that for my girls. But after she died, I can't even put up a tree. I don't want to put the tree up. I don't want to decorate
How long's your
it.
mom been gone? How long's your mom been gone?
10 years. 10
So
years.
you haven't celebrated Christmas in 10 years?
I celebrate it because my children do. I do. But and I have a friend who has 5 children. I have them do Christmas lists. But on that day, I'd rather not do anything. I really don't want to do anything.
So we have your daughter here, and we're going to bring her out in a bit because as we talked about it, we thought it would be interesting. Again, 10 years. She's an adult now,
Yes.
but experiencing it as a child and adult, and really hearing you say this as well. And I said, Diana said it's the same way. I do see some women who have joined Christine and Jalea and
Jayla.
Jayla. I'm sorry. Sister. Hi, Jayla. And then Lisa Marie is on as well. But with that, so I heard a couple of things that you said. The holidays you don't want to like, especially Christmas, because it was mom's Christmas, and the day could just come and go, and it wouldn't even matter.
I wouldn't even matter. It wouldn't even matter to me. And the crazy thing is that my stepmother absolutely loves Christmas as well. And
celebrate with them.
She puts that Christmas tree up after Halloween, and I'm like, ugh.
So what is your experience like going into the stores and all the music playing and all?
I can't stand it. I hate it. As soon as I hear it, like I go to JCPenney's to get my hair done, and they've already started playing Christmas music, and I just feel like bah humbug. I just don't like it.
So talk about that. Again, we're going to have Zaina come on and talk about her experience, but you have 2 daughters.
I do.
So talk about, what Christmas was like after that for them. How did you parent? And try to still, especially when they're in the house, how to make that holiday festive for them, knowing how you were struggling with your own grief?
I went through the motions. I still, I went through the motions. I put on that brave face, like you said. I put that wall up. I did Christmas presents, because at the time they were 13 and 17, I believe, almost 18. And I did Christmas presents. We had a tradition where you can open up one Christmas gift on Christmas Eve. I still did all of that. I designated one of them to put up the Christmas tree, or I put up the Christmas tree myself. But as soon as they got out of the house, went out to college and everything, I stopped doing it.
Wow.
I stopped doing it. Just before this, my daughter and I were talking about me going to my parents' house for Thanksgiving. I'm going to do a turn and burn. My dad likes it when I make macaroni and cheese, and he likes when I make them sweet potato pies. And I'm just literally going to bake those things, drop them off, and I'm coming home. I don't want to do it this year. I did it last year. I don't want to do it this year. I just don't. And I thought I was getting away with not going down there at all because he didn't mention it. So it was kind of like, okay, you won't mention it, I'm not going to mention it. And that man called me back. It was like, you coming down? I don't like doing it. We used to go down there for Thanksgiving. And I didn't like it that much either. But, I'm very good at smiling and making it seem like nothing is wrong. Nobody really knew that I absolutely hated it. It wasn't until And Zaina could probably say that it wasn't until they left. I think she may have started seeing some of it as she got older. So what I would try to do is I try to make the excuse, oh, well, you're older now. We don't need a tree. You're 17 years old. Why do we need to put a tree up? There aren't any presents underneath this tree. Why would we
So
need a tree?
you're being, and let me mention, you're being a bah humbug, but not really. They don't really know that the grief was behind it.
Yeah.
Not sharing, this is why, because it hurts me too much.
And eventually I talked to Zaina about it. I think I talked to both of them about it. I told them. And, well, it'll be interesting to hear Zaina's point of view on it.
Let's go ahead and bring her on, shall we?
All right. Well, let's do that. This is my baby.
So bring Miss Zaina out. Hi, Zaina. I think she's on mute. You want to take her off of mute?
Take yourself off.
Hi, Zaina. How are you?
Hi, I'm okay.
Good. So you heard, y'all got the same smile too. Look at that. Wow. You heard your mom sharing. Did you hear anything new that you hadn't heard before tonight in terms of how she felt?
Not really. She did talk to us about it as I got older because I'm the youngest. So she might have said something to Zori about it sooner, or Zori might have noticed it sooner than I did because she's 5 years older than me.
Mm-hmm.
I think the one thing that did stick out to me though that I kind of like forgot about is Mom talking about Grandma's Christmas cards and how she used to put them up. That like hit me like a ton of bricks just 2 seconds ago.
Wow. Wow. Because it's a memory, right?
Yeah. It's a deep memory too. And like now I don't even like know where those Christmas cards are.
I don't know where they are either. And I haven't looked for them. I won't. If I find them, they're probably in a box. A lot of her stuff is in the garage, and it's been there for the past 10 years. I won't even touch it.
Won't even touch.
No.
So Zaina, I wanted to ask you, you're an adult now, but even as a teenager, what was it like to suddenly have Christmas, or was it changed? I know Mom said that she did kind of continue on, but did you notice a difference? Like, what was Christmas like for you as a child, like before your grandma passed away and then after?
To me, it kind of started really after Grandma died. That so me and my Uncle Ron, our birthdays are 10 days apart. So his birthday is on Halloween and my birthday is 10 days before.
Mm-hmm.
So it started, it was like, it'd be like a decline. Like Mom would be super excited and everything for my birthday because she had to, and I guess now she kind of had to put that face on because she, still wanted me to celebrate my birthday and be happy. But then it would slowly start to kind of like go down.
And you saw that as a child? You saw that as a child? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I noticed it around the time that I was maybe about 16, right before Zori like kind of really like moved out of the house, that she was just delegating. Like she'd be like, oh, Zaina's gonna put up the tree this year, or Zori's gonna put up the tree. And I didn't really I didn't notice it. And then I finally did kind of like put 2 and 2 together. And then it was kind of like also a decline of not just Mom, but also my sister as well, who was really, really close to my grandmother, that she stopped celebrating as well. She stopped decorating at one point, and it was just me in there decorating. Wow. And I was like, something ain't right here.
Wow. Yeah, she's right. She's right.
And I didn't fully put 2 and 2 together, I guess, until I was maybe about 19. Which is like crazy to say because I'm only 24 right now, but I was 19 years old. It was right before the pandemic hit, and I was home for the Christmas holiday from school. Like my semester had ended, and I came home, and both of them were just in this funk. And I remember, like, me and my mom, we really don't argue very often. Like I like to say my mom is my best friend because we talk about everything, and she's always been my safe place for my whole life and still is to this day. And I think it was the Christmas of 2019 that I really I came home and I was like, why isn't the tree up? Where are the lights at? Why are the lights in the garage? Like, why didn't anybody bring any of this out? Like, I'm home finally, like we can't you know, it's 2 days before Christmas. Where's the Christmas tree? And mom had said to me, she was just like, I'm not doing all of that. And I was like, Mom, you're acting like a Grinch. And that was like one of the biggest fights I think that we've ever had.
Wow.
Is me. I was 19 years old. I was like, you're a Grinch. You're ruining the holidays for me.
Yep.
And I'm not happy. And I just want to go back to Stevenson. And I'm pretty sure I just like walked away and was in my room for a little bit.
Doors were slammed on that one.
Yeah. Not happy. Mom was also like, well, you don't know what I'm going through. And like, we really don't argue. So it was something crazy.
It was bad.
And I think that was the first time I had ever had the thought come to my head. So that was about 5 years after grandma had died, that, you know, maybe she is really hurting. And I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
And she came to me after and just said, you know, this is something that I'm struggling with. I haven't shown you this, but I'm struggling. And I had to kind of learn how to navigate through it, because to me, like, I'm grieving. I still grieve and everything, but I was so young. I was 6 when my Uncle Ron died, and even, like, my memories of him have started to fade away as I get older. I tell mom all the time, I can't remember the sound of his voice. I can't. I was 6. I don't, you know, and I wish I did still have it, but I don't. And, like, grandma, I was 13, so it was really, really bad, and everything happened so fast that I feel like I didn't really take a step back and look at it. And instead, like, I was like, "Oh, the holidays, I can do this to remember grandma," but I didn't think that like, my sister and then my mom could be struggling while I was just like, "Oh, let's do it in memory of her," that they were just, like, completely shutting down. I, like, never thought about it.
Yeah, but Zori's doing good. Zori got a whole Christmas tree scheme and everything. So white Christmas, she really gets into it. She
does, yeah.
Yeah, but it's because of her fiance. She and her fiance.
So Dana, let me ask you this in terms of, and I'm asking you to not only talk to your mom, but talk to maybe moms that are on this call who have children that may be not quite understanding why mom acts the way she does during the holidays. How can moms communicate, or what can they do to better adjust during the holidays for their children? Like, what do you feel maybe that you needed that you didn't get?
I think it was just the fact that she hadn't said anything to me about how she was feeling until I was 19 years old. I felt, to me, like, at the time I was in my first year of college, I felt like I was really growing up and, you know, coming into my own. And then it felt like a huge part of me that she hid that from me, and I felt like a 5-year-old again. I felt like a child. It was almost like I felt like she didn't tell me because I didn't understand. Like I wouldn't understand.
You wouldn't.
But in reality, I sometimes do wish that my mom had said something to me sooner, because then I wouldn't have had that huge blow up where I was slamming doors and getting mad and saying, "You ruined this for me."
It was that vulnerability.
It would have been. Yeah, I would have been more gentle, I think. But I mean, we learn, and now that I do know that that's the reason why she turns into a Grinch at the end of the year, I know a lot better. I know a lot better now, and it's easier. So I kind of wish I had that to where, and almost maybe, you know, I don't know, Mom, maybe you didn't tell me because it's just how you were coping with it. But I do wish I had known sooner. Same thing with my sister. Me and her talked about it years later, that, you know, especially when it was the 3 of us, it's easier for her to celebrate the holidays when she has her own house and her own, you know, I don't want to say her own life, but now that she is a full adult, her own life. As opposed to when it was the 3 of us in the house, it was just too much for her.
Yeah. So, Markeisha, I see a question here from Diane. It
Yes,
says,
I
have you
put it up.
gone to grief counseling outside of the Faithful Moms Women's Group? If so, has that helped you process your loss? And I'll ask this probably to everybody. Has anybody, so Diane and Shira as well, we're going to get to your stories as well, but has anybody, I have not, I'm in therapy, but I've never done specific grief therapy. I don't think I've talked to anyone about
I
the
have
loss of my
not.
dad or my brother.
I have not, and I haven't been to therapy, period. Um, so that's definitely something that I'm working
Yeah,
on.
that's an interesting question, Diana. Because I just, like I
Thank you
said,
for
never,
that. No,
yeah.
I have not
And
gone to
we
therapy.
brought therapy. How many times we talk about therapy on this show? We
I
we
know,
talk
and
about
I'm
it all
like,
the
I'm
time. And
fine. I'm fine. I
yeah,
hate Christmas. Everything's fine.
and it's uncomfortable to talk about that too. I feel like we all know that we need to be talking about this. I mean, we're having a chat, and I know we don't have a professional. Usually we have one on tonight. We don't have tonight, but we know that we need that guidance from someone who's clinically trained to be able to help us and walk us through that.
For sure. For sure. And I will say that being a part of Faith-Filled Moms has really brought therapy and those resources to the forefront of my mind. But I haven't taken that step yet.
Yeah.
I'll be honest.
We're gonna keep planting that seed. We're gonna keep
Yeah, I haven't taken. I'm not
Mhm.
ready to talk about my feelings.
Yeah.
You all know me. I'll make a joke before
Mhm.
I'll sit and
Mhm.
cry. I make
That's
that.
coping, right? That's how you that's your
Yeah,
coping
I'll
mechanism.
say I lost my tear ducts in the war. So before I do that, and that it was a little bit of why I didn't tell Zaina or her sister what was going on with me. I just let it bottle up to a point where it exploded.
Yeah.
And I remember that day, it's really the first time I'm hearing that, Zaina was coming from that space where, I want to honor my grandmom. This is what she did. This is her traditions. And but at that time, I didn't want to see it that way.
Do
I didn't want.
you
I thought she
see it
was being
now?
incredibly selfish. I
Do you
thought that.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead. Oh, I said at that time, I thought she was just being incredibly selfish. And I was like, why can't she just see what is happening to me? But I learned that lesson that, uh, kind of like a closed mouth don't get fed. She's not a mind reader. She can't, she couldn't possibly know what was going on with me.
So
Yeah.
would you see yourself ever honoring your mom by doing that again?
I don't think so.
Really?
Not at this point. But, both of my girls are going to be wives this time next year. And so, yeah,
Congratulations.
shut the ring off. Put a ring on it. Right.
I have to. He did a
And
great job.
both of them. And so I'm anticipating grandchildren. And so I'm thinking that that spirit in me will, to be that mom. I can't be the bah humbug mom. That's just not in my nature.
And counseling will help with that. It's
I'm not
just a
there
word.
yet.
I
I'm
know.
going
I'm
to
just
get
putting
there.
it
I'm
out
going
there.
to get there.
But I do want
But,
to ask. I want to ask our guests.
yes.
Are there guests here that are grieving and that are struggling, but are not talking, not with a therapist, but not with family members? Are you bottling it up inside? I just want to learn, are there people that are bottling their grief up inside and not talking to anyone about it? And if so, how is that impacting you and affecting you? And I see Diana's comment. That's what helped me cope with the loss of my father. Being the youngest of 7 and being the only one to see him pass was a lot. But the grief counseling was offered that helped her. And I think that's a great point. Like I said, I haven't, my brother passed in 2020, from COVID, and then my dad in 2022. And I started therapy in January of 2023. But I don't think even in any of the sessions, it's been brought up. And it's probably, and I feel like I'll be in therapy for the rest of my life, honestly, whether, how often, it could be once a month, once a quarter, whatever. But I feel like there's always places that we can heal from, places that we need to heal from. And so those are conversations that will happen in the future. But it's just now that we're talking about it, we've had so many grief shows, and I've never thought about specific grief counseling before.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to transition to Shira now. Shira, you have a situation where neither of your parents are here with you. And if you can kind of just share, just your story and what the holidays look like for you right now.
So, well, first I want to say that I'm happy that we're doing this, and also give a shout out to my cousin Leslie. She's my cousin, so happy that she joined in tonight. The holidays now, um, it's been a long time. I guess my mom has been gone for 11 years, and my dad has been gone for 16 years, and he passed away in November as well. And so, I think in the beginning, I tried really, really hard to kind of like force myself to be um, around like family and going to things and taking like my children to things and stuff like that. But now I've kind of relaxed that a lot. Um, and I've become, I guess, more and more okay with, us just staying at home. Um, I don't know. I feel like the pandemic kind of helped a lot with that though, but I've really gotten like more comfortable with it just being us and not feeling like my children are missing out on a lot of the things that that I was used to in my
Mm-hmm.
childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Like my mom, and Les can attest to that. My mom was always the one who threw the Christmas parties. Everything was at my house. So I always had family at my house. I always had my cousins over my house. Like we were always together. So when she passed away, I didn't really want to take that on, um, especially with like around the time that she passed away was not too long after Layla was diagnosed with autism and everything. But I did want to try and keep up that relationship of like visiting family members and stuff like that. But it's weird because another part of it that I saw too was like there would be years where I had that desire to do things like that. And then there were years where I had no desire, but I made myself do it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And there were times where like I was just like, I think going back to like that grace and space question,
Mm-hmm.
I I for a long time I didn't give myself grace to feel anything or to feel much about either of them passing away. Like I felt stuff in private, but I was very big on that. So I can understand where Marquisha's come from. I was big on I was not I just wasn't in the mood for people to see me cry.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't in the mood for people to feel sympathy for me
Yeah.
or
Uh-huh.
anything. I just didn't like I really had a very big like leave me alone kind of thing. And just
Yeah.
let me do stuff, let me get things done, you know. And so being in a place to like let people in is still kind of a struggle. Um, and I'll talk about my parents, I guess, kind of like when I want to. But like, I, this is going to sound bad. Sometimes it bothers me when other people bring up my parents. Like,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, um, I don't know. I've really, really internalized and really personalized their passing that like it's kind of like if I want to talk, then I'll talk. But if I don't, then don't
Then
bring it
respect
up.
that. Yeah. Respect that.
you know.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can't do anything about that. People are going to bring up your parents. If people have relationships and they have feelings towards your parents and your family, your loved ones that passed too. But and I'll try my best to engage just for um I guess for appropriation. But if I had it my way, it's just kind of like, I just I don't know. I don't know.
Do
It's
you
just
have anyone to talk? Do you talk about it with anyone? Do you talk about just kind of maybe your experience of not having your parents, and let me ask you this in terms of with that, are there traditions that maybe you had with them that you carry on or don't carry on with your girls now?
um I also see a therapist.
Hmm.
We have brought up my parents briefly, but we haven't really gotten into very great detail about it just yet. Um, I mean, me and my husband talk about it, because he's been there through all of those things, and it also we talk about because he lost his father as well not too long ago. So, um, but other than that, um, not really. It's not like something that I don't know.
And I asked you that to say, like, so how we have Zaina on, if we brought
Mm,
your girls on in 5 years, what do you think they would say the holidays meant to them?
So I will say, as far as the holidays are concerned, um, um, I do try to keep up a lot of like the traditions from like my childhood. Like we put the tree up very early. Like it's something I don't not celebrate the holidays.
Hmm.
We do
Hmm.
absolutely celebrate the holidays. Um, I try to make it a very big deal for them because I do think that's part of my grieving process too. Is that I grieve the fact that they don't have their grandparents. And
Yeah,
I grieve the fact that they lost their grandparents very early on. Well, Larissa never met my father.
that's
So,
interesting. So you're grieving for yourself, but you're grieving for them as well. They're
yeah,
grieving
like,
for their loss as well.
yeah. And I'm grateful for the times and the things that, like, and the people who have come in my life to kind of help kind of curtail that.
Hmm.
And I say that, like, as far as like my church family is concerned, and the mothers have really become a very important part of that. I tell your mom that all the time. I tell Mother Moses that all the time, that the way that they've kind of embraced my children, as Aunt Bessie, I tell them all the time, the way that they've embraced and they check on and they care for and they acknowledge their birthdays, like almost like like their grandchildren, has
Hmm.
been such a blessing in that area for me, because I will say that's something that I've grieved a lot is, and it'll be something like the other day I was in the grocery store and a grandpa was with his granddaughter,
Hmm.
and just having a very random conversation about what she wanted to eat or something like that. And in that moment, I felt that grief.
Yeah, that
That
that visit, right? That when that grief
Yeah,
visits out of nowhere, just from
yeah.
some type of trigger that you may,
hmm
yeah,
And
yeah.
because I remember like when Layla was born and how excited my dad was that he had a granddaughter, and he came down, for everything. And
Hmm.
he lived in North Jersey at the time, and he was so excited to have a granddaughter. And I was just like, man, like, and even the connections between, like, right before he passed away, he had actually started working with children, with youth with autism.
Wow.
And she didn't get diagnosed till he passed away when she was 1. Well, she was almost 2, and she didn't get diagnosed till she was 3. So things like that, like, I always wondered, and I say it a lot, I always wondered what he would be like
Those what
with
ifs,
her
right?
now.
Yeah. Hmm.
There's a
Hmm.
lot of what ifs, especially
Hmm.
now at the age they are now, coming into, Layla being a senior and all this different stuff that's happening, in her life and everything. Larissa starting high school for the very first time, and so it's like, um, I think about that stuff a lot. Um,
How do
yeah,
you
but
process it as you're thinking about it? How are you processing it?
um, I think there's just a lot of missing. Like, there's a lot of I wish they were here for this. I wish they were here to see that. There's one. This is a really cute story. I think that so Halloween, we don't do anything really, big or whatever for Halloween or anything.
Hmm.
But there's like those older movies that I don't know if you guys ever saw them, like Gremlins.
Hmm.
and stuff. So
They're not that old, okay?
you know, I'm
Ma'am.
sorry, I take it
Ma'am.
back. I take it back.
And I love we always say that. We love that as we're even talking about a difficult topic, that you can find joy. You
Yeah,
know, as we're discussing just a difficult topic, it's important to be able to I just was looking at some previous notes. You can have grief and joy. They can
yeah,
commingle with each other. Just because
yeah,
you're grieving doesn't mean that you can't laugh, that you can't smile, that you can't have a bit of joy, even in the midst of your grief. Grief and joy can commingle and coexist with each other.
yeah. And that's kind of where the gremlin story goes, because I didn't want my daughters to see my sadness, so I kind of
Mhm.
like made it into like a conversation. So we were watching the movie, and I think it was like Gremlins 2 or something like that. And I had been trying to like clean out and declutter and everything like that. And I was going through like some pictures that I hadn't put in a photo album yet. And one of them was my mom holding a gizmo.
Mm.
And this is from a long time ago. I must have been, I don't even know whose it was. It's just a picture of her holding it. So I don't know if it was a Christmas or a birthday or what. And so I showed it to Larissa. And because Larissa's very into like plushies and, stuffed animals, stuff like that. And I said, "This is your Nana," because that's what they called her. And I said, "I didn't even realize that that I had this picture of her holding this gizmo." And she was so like kind of excited about that she was like, "Mom,
Mhm.
are you okay if I keep this picture?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." And that really like warmed my heart that like we can have conversations, and if they ask questions about either of them, I definitely, talk to them about it. Talk to them about how they were, their mannerisms, stuff like that. Um, I think that that helps.
Yeah, because I think that even sometimes in our children, a lot of times maybe even not they knew them, but they don't remember them. They may have known them when they were somebody when they were younger,
Yeah.
but as the years can go on, children can their memories, they can forget unless we try to keep them
Yeah.
alive. So through those stories, I think through those pictures, through those memories, we
Hmm.
kind of paint the picture in their mind to keep that loved one alive, even in their lives as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what Zainab was saying about our Uncle Ron.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's like because they were when they passed away, that I often that's often like a concern of mine is, do they actually remember them?
Mm-hmm.
Like I know Larissa never got to meet my dad, so I just tell her a lot about
Mm-hmm.
my dad. But I often wonder, do they remember their nana? Do they remember going to her house? Do they remember, all these different things about her? So I do try to talk about them pretty often, and I tell them where we got like certain traditions from, and different things like that, so that they always have like that bank of knowledge.
Yeah.
And I think that that helps me with with I guess like with embracing their memory, because sometimes I get into like a little, I don't know what you would call it, but I say to myself, it's a very weird place to be in, to have to realize that your parents are no longer on this earth.
Mm-hmm. We talked about
And
that last week, right? As well.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's like, and especially for me because I lost them both in my early 20s. So I think to myself, um, man, when it happened, there weren't a lot of people that I knew who could understand where I was coming from.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There weren't, there weren't,
There weren't
and
a lot
my,
of 20-year-olds that lost both parents.
right. And my
Yeah.
friends tried to be, as supportive as they could. And I appreciate as much as they could do and knew to do it and try to do. Um, but it was very lonely at that point. It was very isolating
Mm-hmm.
sometimes to
Mm-hmm.
like not be able to explain how, I don't know if that makes sense, how you're rationalizing in your mind that you live in a world where your parents don't technically exist anymore. And it was just something that like kind of, it was something that I had to like really deal with for a long time. Like now it's not as sad or it doesn't stick in my mind so much. I don't go to that place, to that, I guess, that kind of darkness a little bit. But
And I just saw up on the screen, Markeisha, put that back up there if you don't mind. There's an African proverb that states, as long as a person's name is called, they are not truly gone. And thank you, Karen, for putting it up there, because as you were talking, I was thinking about one of our previous guests, and the name who it was escapes me, probably Leah. I think maybe Leah, who was going to join us this week from her previous show. She mentioned that your loved one's memory lives on in us. You know, as long as we can recall them, as long as we can remember them, they're not, like you said, they're not physically here on earth, but they're still in our lives, like because their memory is still there. So they're never truly gone. And we can hopefully, you know, my goal was to get to a place that as I have these memories, and I'm getting there, that you're smiling about things, that as I can go through pictures and talk about again how important it is to take pictures, because when you're no longer there, when you're no longer here, those pictures are there of you, and you're taking pictures of those memories, those events in time. So this Christmas, make sure you're taking pictures this Christmas, because you never know when it's going to be someone's last Christmas. And so how it's important, birthdays, to make sure you celebrate every birthday. I think COVID taught us that you don't have to wait for the milestone. Every single year of life, every single birthday should be celebrated, should be documented, should be, you know, going through the motions for someone. Everyone should feel important on their birthday, because it's another year of life that you're being blessed with. And we should be celebrating our own birthdays. It shouldn't, you know, I don't go to work. I've never worked on my birthday. That's just a day that I'm going to celebrate another year of life. So however, but I think it's also important that we can celebrate the dates of birth of those loved ones as well. Or, you know, even sometimes you don't celebrate the dates of their passing, but you acknowledge it by something. I've shared it before. My brother passed away in April. And so I just decided, I think probably the second year, that I'm going to go to a tulip farm every year on his birthday. And you know, for the last, I think 3 years now, we've been going to the tulip farm out here, because that's when, like, it happened that he passed when the tulips bloom there. And that's one way that I can just go and be surrounded by beauty, that I won't have the heaviness of the day, because I'm surrounded by beautiful tulips. So I just encourage people, maybe to any day, but especially on those milestone days. And again, maybe even Christmas. So maybe you do something different for Christmas. Maybe you don't do the same tradition because it reminds you of that loved one, but you do something different to honor them. There's another way that you can celebrate the holidays in a way that honors them, that you're not sitting in that puddle of grief.
Yeah, I completely understand that. It's interesting because I don't. It's funny because I think for the first maybe year or two, there was like, I couldn't really understand why. And those days, even if I don't do something to like physically acknowledge them, I almost see patterns in like my body and my mind acknowledging those days, if that makes sense. I don't know if it does, but it's like, and for a long time, I didn't realize why I would feel like this level of anxiety, why I would even something like get headaches, why I would get tired, you know, stuff like that. And then it kind of like started to make sense that every year around this time, my body actually shows manifestations of the loss. Like I would actually get like, you know, I would get really anxious, and it was like things had to be like perfect, or everything had to be done, or everything had to be complete, or, you know, it was stuff like that. And so it's like, even in those years where I didn't want to verbally or outwardly acknowledge the date, even though it's always there, it's always in my brain, my body did it anyway, you know.
Wow. So Diane, I want to transition to you as well, because I know that you also, and I didn't even know your full story, so I was asking kind of to share, but both of your parents are gone as well. But your father's passing was significant for the Christmas holiday. So I wanted to ask you kind of just to share to our guests about your dad, about his passing, and how that that changed your life forever.
Right. I'm going to share. I'm going to share about that. I just wanted to add that it's just a little. It's ironic that this last spring we have life groups at my church, and I led a life group, and my life group was called When God Weeps,
Mm.
and it's an 8-week life group about grief and and suffering and loss, and so I just thought it was just interesting that I led that life group, and this weekend we're having a women's conference, and my pastor was like, "Can you do a session on grief?"
Wow.
And she called it, she gave it a working title of, "Is it godly to grieve?"
Mm.
And as I went into prayer and the Holy Spirit started to sort of give me a perspective of what I would share, I had the subtitle of grief fruit, almost like grapefruit,
Yeah.
but grief fruit, because out of that, learning from, just the things I gleaned from just leading the life group on grief. Um, and that particular study was written by Joni Eareckson Tada. I
Mhm.
don't know if you're
Yeah.
familiar with her and her story, but it was so encompassing, and it really helped me a lot. Like, in hindsight, it's helping me a lot. And I'm hearing a lot of the comments and the experiences that everyone's going through, and I'm like, wow, whereas I was, leading this life group, I'm thinking I'm doing it for, just doing it, but I'm like, wow, I was receiving too,
Yeah.
at the same time. But I just wanted to share, like, my father died on Christmas. He died on Christmas night. Um, and I was sharing with Tanya that, I was 5 years old, and the I can remember where I was. I can remember what I heard. I can remember where I was standing. I can remember it like it was yesterday. The memory. And at the time, my mother and father were separated, but they were working on getting back together. And because they were both kind of very private people, and my dad's family is very, how can I say, they're very exuberant, and they're like kind of like in a lot of, in your business kind of, but not in a bad way, but that's just
Mhm.
their nature. So they kind of weren't sharing with everyone like, hey, we're going, they literally were like dating again and starting to, see each other again. Of course, I'm 5 years old, like I didn't really realize that, but they didn't know that. And my mother had told me that afterwards, that, they had started to mend things, and they were, working on getting back together. And it was Christmas Day, and my father, earlier that day, he had brought over, because they were still separated, he brought over presents for my brother and I. And so that night, my mom said, we're going to call daddy, and so you and your brother can thank him for the Christmas presents. And it was like, okay. So I grew up in Southwest Philly, and it's kind of like a bar on every corner type of situation.
Mhm.
And I can remember overhearing my mother and my grandmother were in the kitchen cooking. And I remember my mother, the news was on, and they were talking about, like shootings and, the crimes and things like that happening. And my grandmother made this comment about, yeah, well, always around the holidays, people start, they start that drinking, and, they go out to bars and they just drink, and things happen, and, people start shooting up and doing all this weird, she just made this comment. And I just heard it in the back of my mind. I was like, okay, she said that. So when I was on the phone with my father, I said to him, I called him, I said, last thing I said to him was, I said, this is the goofiest thing I still remember. I said, and daddy, he said, what? I said, don't go in any bars. I told him that. My father wasn't even a drinker, but it was
Mhm.
just funny because I had heard my grandmother talking about the bars and things like that. And I was sharing with Tanya, like, I don't know if you are familiar with Donkeys in Camden. It's like in the front part is like a bar. Like there's like if you go in that door, it's a bar where there's seating in a bar and everything, the bartender. But in the back, if you go in the back entrance, it's a restaurant. So you can go in, sit down,
Mhm.
order food. And that night, my father, his brother, and another friend of the family had gone to, I don't know what the name of the place was, but they went somewhere like that, where there was like a bar in the front, but in the back it was a restaurant. So they said when they got there, there was a man at the door on the bar in the bar part, and he was having some type of a verbal altercation, some type of argument with the bartender. And that was it. So my dad and my uncle went, and they all sat in the back, ordered their food, and were waiting for their food. And the man came back. He left, and then he came back again. And when he came back again, he came with a gun, and he started shooting up round robin, shooting in the air with the gun. And the place had these wrought iron light fixtures in the ceiling, and one of the bullets hit the light fixture, and the bullet hit my dad in the head, and he died immediately. So um, I can remember that night. My mother must have gotten the phone call, and back in the day when you had the phones, and you have one phone off the receiver, and if someone else has another phone off the receiver, you can hear
Mhm.
everything. So all I remember was I remember hearing my mother upstairs. She was upstairs. I remember hearing her scream and hearing her crying, and I knew she was on the phone because the phone had rang. And I was in the living room, and I picked the phone up, and I could hear my mother crying, and I could hear, and it was like the whole house was just full of the sound of my mom crying, like loud. Like it just seemed to me as a child, just seemed like
Mhm.
louder than life. I didn't even know what happened yet, but that was what happened. And it was weird because it was almost like my whole memory for a couple of years just went like I don't even remember the rest of being five.
Wow. Wow.
Or like it just like is like going like my whole memory to like sort of like a gap there
Mhm. Mhm.
in my memory. But my dad's side of the family is very they're very what's the word, traditional. Like my grandfather is from Nigeria, so they're very the family unit is very knit. Like they're very into venerating other family members, and remembering,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
commemorating and that
Mhm.
type of thing. So they will always keep my dad's memory alive. And that kind of made me feel uncomfortable because there were 8 kids, there were 8 children in the family, my father's brothers and sisters. And I believe he was the first one to
To
pass
pass
out of the
away.
8,
Mhm. Mhm.
out of the 8. So it was kind of weird. So when my brother and I were growing up, it was always like we were like the special ones because we didn't have our
Have a
dad.
day.
So it was
Mhm.
like, oh, Diana Carlton, you're here. Oh, come on, Diana Carlton. I felt bad, like, because it was like, and then my other first cousins are like, oh, here they come again. Like, why they get such special treatment, type of thing. But you know, the holidays were always like kind of like good, like you know. But for a long time, I didn't have like closure for my dad's death because my
Mhm.
mom. I mean, I can't. Adults make decisions that they make. They make their own
And
decisions.
we don't always think about the kids. And that's why I was bringing it up. We don't always think about the kids that we have that are also grieving. I am guilty. I can say this now, even
Mhm.
as we're talking. I don't think I'm having these conversations and checking in with my girls and are you okay, especially during the holidays. I don't do that. And I now from this conversation, I need to just check in just every now and then throughout the year just to see how they're doing.
See
If they
how
don't want
they're
to talk about
doing.
it, you don't have to talk about it,
And
but at
talk about
least
it.
to engage
Right.
because I don't do
And
that.
and my mother decided not to go to his funeral
Mm.
because there was some other stuff that had happened because it's family drama
Yeah.
because they were separated, and the family didn't know. My dad's side of the family didn't know that what they were working on repairing the relationship. They just thought that my mom moved, or that she left in, basically, right? So on that end, my mother and my father had a house on Delancey Street. So we were living with my grandmother and my grandfather. So they went ahead and they sold the house. Like they went ahead and like basically didn't consult my mom or whatever. So my mom held this grudge for many years against, my dad's family. So I felt as though, because I never went to his funeral, I felt later on in life, I felt like, wow, I never had closure. I never had closure. I never had a chance to say goodbye. So every time someone from my dad's side, my family, passed away, it was like closure and more closure. Like I would get closure. It sounded crazy, but I felt like I got closure from his passing and from my other family members in his family.
Wow.
So I know it sounds weird, but yeah, I sort of dealt with it that way.
And I was going to say, I know that as we even transition to your mom's passing, that your mom was very impactful. I remember even when I first met you and you kind of talked about just the impact that she made in your family and the devastation of her loss later in life. So you have a loss early in life, and then you have a loss later in life.
Yeah.
And I think even this is probably the same thing, an important conversation about your children, were of age. How did you grieve? And then how did you support your children grieving as well, and especially when it comes to the holidays?
The holidays. Well, my mom passed during the whole COVID shutdown in 2020. And it was the type of thing where I spoke to her that night, and spoke to her the day before, and the next day, she had gone home to be with the Lord. So she passed in her sleep. So and my mom lived 2 doors down from me. So she's my neighbor as well. So that was difficult, having to like pass.
Because that's every
difficult.
day.
Every day having to drive past her house, but that's still something that comes up. But yeah, my mom was a big celebrator. She celebrated birthdays. She celebrated Christmas, Thanksgiving. And it's so funny because some things I look back on, and it was, like she liked to put her little, she'd hang up her little decorations. Easter, she had a little Easter tree. She would put hang little eggs on, so things like that. It still makes me smile. I miss my mom, but I makes me laugh. And at Christmas time, when I was younger, we would put the tree up together, and she had saved like all like the glass balls, like the glass, those old fashioned blown, glass Christmas ornaments. And she would always, and it was so funny because I would always laugh. I'm like, okay, Mom, now you're going to tell us the story about this Christmas ball, and she would have the thing, and she'd be like, you see this? This is older than you are. And she would, tell us about, there was always a story about every ornament on the tree practically. So that was funny. So that brings back a memory to me. So what I did was, yes, I know that, okay, that was after that first Christmas without my mom. But I said, you know what? I want to do it because it's a memory and I miss her, but I got joy out of it as well. And my kids too. So, I mean, you go in her house at Christmas time, she had, the like pillows, she had Christmas pillows, and she had stuffed animals, she had everything. And she got into this tradition where every year at Christmas time, it would always be a Sunday morning when we were on our way to church and everyone was dressed up right around Christmas. She'd say, come on, you have to come over and take your picture. You have to come to, because we would go to her house and we would sit on her couch. And me and the kids, we would all sit on her couch and we would pose and we would take a picture. And that's one of the things, like you said, like take pictures, have those memories. And that was, and I look now and I look, okay, year by year, as my kids were getting older, there we are sitting on Mom's couch, taking that picture. And because she was such a celebrator, and she was the one to have me up. Because my mom was she was a CRNA. She was a nurse anesthetist. So every year we would go Black Friday shopping, and she would always shop for her techs. her OR text. And she's like, come on. So she would, we'd be out, like, it'd be dark, so it'd be dark 30 in the morning, and we'd be out there, shopping, and she'd be shopping for gifts for her staff. And, I just, the same thing, like she was a celebrator. She was a giver. Somebody had birthday. Somebody was having a baby. She was the first one to do something. So I just wanted to keep it. It was funny. You talked about like the Christmas cards and doing that. I did that too. For me, I don't know what the word is. I don't know if it's cathartic, but I find the joy in celebrating the memory and keeping that up, because I knew it was something that made her happy, and it made me happy, and it was a shared good memory.
And it could be a legacy too, right? You're sharing that memory, but then you're also continuing her legacy by doing something that she loved to do as well.
And I also did. I said, Mom used to always do all this stuff, and she'd have the little candy on the table, and the little candy jars. And one thing that I had started doing was I said, you know what? I'm going to start decorating the table for the seasons. So I, like Valentine's Day, and I would, my dining room table, I'll decorate my for Valentine's Day, Christmas, just try to do that a little more. And my children the same way. They like it, because to them it's just normal.
Yeah.
It's just
normal. Yeah, that's gonna be the
right. It's just normal. And when my husband and I got married, in the beginning we would always go to his family, go to his family's house. And then he said, one day he said, you know what? We have to start our own traditions.
Yeah.
Let's start our own traditions. So we did. And then on top of those traditions, of course, things were blended, because my mom lived, like I said, my mom lived 2 doors down.
I think it's important. I was gonna say I want you to hold that thought, but I think it's important to say that changing traditions is not a betrayal of what was as well. Go ahead. I just thought yeah.
And we got into this thing where, for Thanksgiving, I would want my mom to rest, and like, Mom, you don't have to do all this cooking. And she would insist on making something. I want to make this or that. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, I want you to rest. And she's like, I want to contribute. So now I'm like, now I get it. Now I get it that brought her joy, just being a part of that whole, the whole preparing the dinner and all that. And like I said, she lived down the street. So, Thanksgiving, she would come to our house. And it was so funny because we would drive down there, drive 2 doors down, and get her little pots and stuff and we'd drive over to, drive to our house, and we would all eat together. And so it's funny you say that, because sometimes I'll be in the store. My mom had her certain things that she would do, and one of her things was going to Dollar Tree. She would go to Dollar Tree, and sometimes I'll be in Dollar Tree and I'll see an elderly lady, kind of like dressed the way my mom would dress. Have her same little type of coat on, or same little type of shoes, and pushing her little cart, and then it'll just hit me
out of nowhere.
Like I'll see like a senior citizen, and see them just like a lady, usually a woman, my mom was totally independent. She was driving, and, she was outside, a lot, well into her 80s, and it'll just like hit me. I'm like, that's Mom. Yeah. That's something Mom would do. Yeah. And then my kids, my daughter especially, will do things like, well, we called my mom my dear. So she says, I just do it because I know this is what my dear would do, or what my dear would, and, I told Tamara, she just made the U.S. National team. And I say, she was like, wow, if my dear were here. I said, if my dear were here, I said, she would have lost her mind, and she, so she does a lot of things with her grandmother in mind.
Yeah.
She'll do something that, like when my mom passed, she she had a gold necklace with a cross on it. And my daughter asked me, she says, "Mom, can I have that?" I said, "Sure." And then whenever she would do something special or a milestone when she graduated from high school, her honor society induction, things like that, she would wear, and she would never come and tell me, but I would look and she would wear that necklace.
Just like she's there with you. Yeah.
Yep.
She's
Yeah.
there with you.
She would have, my dear, and it sounds kind of silly, but after my mom passed, she was sort of on the fence about changing gyms. And she went and she changed gyms. And she says, "Mom, I'm going to do this for my dear.
Yeah.
I'm doing this for my dear. So I said, she would be happy, you know. So she really keeps her, my son's a little more quiet about it. But my daughter spent a lot of time with her summers, you know, because we lived so close, I was working, but she'd go, spend her summers, every day she'd be down at her grandmother's house,
And I think this whole conversation, as I'm looking at the time, I know we need to wrap up, but I think this whole conversation is important because each of you had space. Like each of you, we were able to provide space for each of you to share memories, share thoughts. And I think I've been writing kind of notes down each of you have been talking in terms of lessons that I'm taking away, and hopefully lessons for our guests as well, that it's important for us to create space for our family and friends just to talk. I'm just hearing lovely memories about each of your relatives and your loved ones. But I'm seeing as you're talking, there's been smiles on each of your faces too, as you've mentioned something about a memory, whether it's whatever it is, but there's been, even you, Markeisha, it's, you know what I mean? There's been smiles on your face at some point as you've talked about it. So I think it's important for us to verbalize and talk about those memories. And I was looking at some of our lessons or notes from some of our previous grief shows. And one of the notes that I said that it's important to talk because if you leave it bottled up, it can choke you. The feelings can choke you. So it's important not only to talk to friends, loved ones, safe spaces around them, but then also really to consider, like we talked earlier, consider talking with a grief counselor, because there may be things that you're feeling and processing, you don't even know what they are or how to deal with them. And a trained professional can help us, deal with those kind of things as well. Another lesson I took was how important pictures are for memories and how important pictures are to help keep that memory alive once someone is gone, especially for someone that never met them, so that your children can see their grandmom or their great grandmom. This is the picture, and that kind of sears in their memory that they now have a memory of someone that they never met, but they can still keep their memory alive as well.
Yeah, it's important that you said that because Zaina, while we were on here, Zaina actually heard from my oldest daughter.
Really?
And Zaina, what did she say about joining?
So my sister, I texted her and I said, "Hey, like I'm gonna be on there too. Do you want to join?" And she said, "I don't want to hear it. I don't want to talk about it."
And we gotta honor that.
We gotta honor that. Yep, that's what I was
the
saying.
space that she needs. Yeah, you have to honor that. And the same thing, well, you can't judge as sisters wherever you are. We can't judge another sibling for not being there. And I think that's especially apparent for adult siblings as well. If one doesn't want to do something or does or doesn't, we can't sit there and judge. You should be over this, or that's the worst thing to say to somebody. You should be over that. The worst thing in the world. Like, give everyone their space to process however it is that they need to. Whether you agree with it, whether it's aligned with you or not, it doesn't matter. That's what that person is going through. We got to respect that. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. Another lesson I'm taking away from this, and we talked about it, joy and grief co-mingling, and it's not a betrayal to that loved one to be able to find joy even in, whether it's this first Thanksgiving that they're not there, their first Christmas, their first birthday, other places that you found joy previously, that you can still find joy even in their memory or even outside of their memory. Joy in whatever space that is, it's okay. We can have joy, and we want to hopefully seek and try to find some joy in this season. I know there's a lot of, some people even on the show now that it's their first holiday without their loved ones, and then others that it's been years, but it's still a struggle. But joy can still be present, and maybe even to look for those spaces of joy. Continued tradition was another lesson, just to continue their memory, continue their legacy. And those are things, something that they did. It's okay to continue to do it and to be able to show your children, because that's a kind of tradition that can be passed on from generation to generation. And then the last thing the note I took was, you're missing a piece of who you are, missing a piece of your heart, and you struggle with what ifs. And that's okay to do that, but we just don't get stuck there. Like, we can think about those what ifs, but we don't have to get stuck in that position. Process it, and then move on. We don't want to see that we're stuck in I call it a pit of grief that you can't get out. Like, you start and you just kind of spiral out of control. And I think that was what I dealt with initially, probably the first year. When I did think about my brother and would grieve about him, I would just kind of get stuck there instead of processing it and then kind of moving on. I would just kind of be anchored in that and sitting in that. So it's important to acknowledge grief. I always say, not always, but I'm saying now, it comes for a visit, but hopefully and prayerfully it won't stay long. It may come, it may tell you something, you may process something, it may visit you. Allow it to visit, allow it to process, and then allow it to go on, allow it to keep moving. So, any closing remarks from any of our guests before we close out tonight? Thank you all, and thank you for being so transparent with your stories as well. I appreciate each of you, and even the comments from our guests. We thank you, those that share comments as well. Anything in closing?
I don't have anything to say. Zaina Braina, you got anything to say?
Just that I love my mom, even though I was slamming doors.
And you're sorry, right? And you're sorry.
I am very sorry. I was slamming doors in a house she owned. Sorry.
No problem.
I just wanted to add that I just had to leave a little nugget, but there's a lot more to this.
Mm-hmm.
But in the study that I was doing about grief, it's talking about finding contentment. And one of the, not, like, oh, I'm not going to be happy, but to finding contentment in your grief, in your loss, that we are content because we're blessed with what God has given us, what we do have left, of us being thankful, especially in this season now, of what we do have. We miss the presence of that person physically with us. We miss the presence of that person being able to, give us more memories, right? But we need to also be reminded that the presence of God is always with us. The Lord is always with us at all times. And when we weep, he weeps, because what concerns him, concerns us, concerns him as well. We're his children, and he loves us dearly and cares for us. So, at times, we can cry, we can grieve. He gave us our emotions. We can be angry. He gave us our emotions, be angry and sin not. But we can say, God, why? I remember when I lost my mom, I was like, why now? Why like this? Yeah, it's okay. He can take it. Yeah. He can take it.
And he's close to us, right?
He is close. He is close to us. He is close to us. So just remember that, that he's there. He cares. He's crying. He's in the room with us when we're crying.
And he wants us to come to him for that comfort, right?
Exactly. And then in our grief, he uses grief to draw us closer to him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That draws us closer to him.
Yeah. And then on that flip side, when he says, he is comforted to us so that we can comfort others. So as we're all talking, we've all gone through and still going through that grief, but we're able to be on the show tonight and offer hopefully comfort to other people who may be going through as well, because knowing that the comfort that we've received.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anything else, Shira, before we close? I'm going to say a quick prayer for those that are grieving tonight before we close as well. But Shira, anything else that you wanted to add before we close?
No, I really enjoyed just this time and this space being made to have those conversations that we kind of can typically go about our day, our week, our month, even our years, and not really make space to talk about them. It's kind of like an unspoken thing, especially amongst family, is the reality, the situation, but you don't always take that time to really talk and how therapeutic it really is to talk about those memories, to talk about, and even talk about some of the harder parts.
Yeah.
But knowing that, I guess like that whole thing is just like getting it out and talking about it helps and gives that confidence that as you, even in this setting, this is just another opportunity to bring those thoughts, those concerns, those feelings to God, because he's listening in even on this.
Yeah.
And he is doing the healing, even if we can't see it
Or feel it at this
outwardly or
point.
right away.
Or
Yeah.
feeling,
Yeah.
working in the supernatural.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And so again, we encourage all of our listeners as well. We say it's our theme for grieving, space and grace, to make sure that you are making space for yourself and giving loved ones space to grieve in whatever way they grieve, but giving yourself grace. And whatever your journey is, whatever your grief journey is, however long it takes, that you give yourself grace and that you give others grace as well. And so we just pray for each person as you go into the holidays. We pray that you're able to find comfort in God, to find comfort in family, and pray that you're able to make it through. So I'm just going to close us out in prayer, and then we'll say goodnight. So, dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the conversation we had. We thank you for each guest being able just to be open and honestly be transparent and share. We thank you that you are the ultimate comforter. We thank you that you are close to our broken hearts, God, and that we can go to you safely with anything for comfort, for strength. So I just pray for strength for every person listening that needs it, God. You know exactly what they're feeling. You know exactly how they're grieving, and you know what they need from you. So I just pray that you would show up in their lives, that they know that you're there, that they know that you've touched something, that you've healed them, no matter how small or minuscule that healing may be, that there's a difference coming after this show tonight, Lord. And we just pray your blessing, your protection, your comfort, and your care. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you, ladies. Thank you, guests. We appreciate you. And we will see you back next month, which is next week, December, for our year-end closing. We're going to have some additional conversations and talk about just some additional things that hopefully more lighthearted than tonight. But again, we just welcome you back to Faithful Moms next month, next week, as we close out our 2024 season. God bless and take care.
Thank you.